Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Content Casuals. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Nathan, and this week we are giving you our spoiler-filled review of Mortal Kombat! I can stop now. Alright, as per usual, if you guys want to see more of us, you can follow us on our socials, which will be in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, as well as you can check out our website on WordPress. Other than that, we are two pretty big MK fans. I mean, I might be slightly bigger, but I wanted to get your first impressions, Nathan, based on your experiences with the franchise. Basically, just how you started your relationship with it, like what game did you first play, and then we can kind of shoot off from there.
Hello. It's funny that you actually asked me to do that because I was going to do that anyways. Because I felt like it was pretty relevant.
You're gonna start somewhere.
Yeah, no, because I am a newer fan. I mean, Mortal Kombat 11, the newest one, is the first one I played online and I got like really into. And the first one I owned was Mortal Kombat X. So yeah, which I only played with you a couple times. I was really bad at it. Because as you know, I got into fighting games because of you through Injustice. We played together.
Yeah, and I know we'll get into greater detail, but MKX definitely was much more fast-paced than what MK11 was. Like, if you go back and watch gameplay footage of it, the speed at which that game not only runs, but is played by pros is almost like night and day. But yeah, go on.
I think I prefer the slower one, because I feel like my reaction time's pretty bad. But yeah, no, so I am a relatively new fan, but I really got into it when playing MK11. I went back and watched some cutscenes. I watched all the cutscenes for MK9. I rewatched 10 and then even 11 because I watched it like a movie, I guess. And then I over the last couple of years I've seen like stuff about the lore and stuff. So yeah, I know most of the characters and everything, and I like it a lot. And yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing the movie for sure. And there were some like good like references to the games and stuff, but yeah, overall, I just feel like they could have done a lot better job.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about my own experience, I first played Mortal Kombat back on the PlayStation 2 with Deadly Alliance, which I think was the first game to ever release on that generation. And I wasn't a huge fan, mainly because I was much more into Tekken at the time, mainly because the graphics were just so much better in that game compared to MK. But I still enjoyed it, and obviously the blood and gore is kind of the thing that is the immediate appeal of Mortal Kombat. But it wasn't until MK9 that I really became invested, because once again I saw that the game was refused classification in Australia, and I went, I must have it, I must play it. And from a casual's perspective, this franchise has always been the violence that draws you in. But then once you actually play it, you begin to realize, oh, the story's actually simple, but it's interesting, and the characters are fun. So I was way more into MK9, which I still think is probably the best Mortal Kombat to come out over the last 10, 20 years. Mainly because of the roster. Like, I just think it had the best roster of characters. And then, of course, I was really excited for MKX, and slightly disappointed because I just felt there wasn't as much replayability in that game. Because, like you said, we had been playing Injustice, the first one, quite a bit, and I felt that the characters in that were just a lot of fun to enjoy, and because it was the first kind of big DC fighting game, I just had much more fun with it. And then Injustice 2 came out. Obviously, we were massively into that. Again, fantastic roster, reminded me a lot of MK9, and then, of course, MK11, like you just mentioned, and I enjoyed it, but when I had put over 100 hours into that game now, and I just started to fall off, mainly because the characters just weren't really doing anything for me. Like, they had a pretty good roster, but yeah. Anyway, I've always enjoyed the story, and obviously my experiences stem not only from the games, but from the films, the live-action ones anyway, and I've seen some of the animated series, I think from the late 90s, early 2000s, I'm not really sure when it came out. But my expectations for this film were kind of half and half, because I knew, once again, based on the trailers, that it looked good, but I could tell that, based on synopses, that it seemed as though they were going to try and do something different, and I didn't know how to anticipate that, which I think is a great springboard into the major difference between the games and this movie, which is the introduction of the character Cole Young. Now, I of course have my own thoughts on him, but I wanted to hear yours first.
Yeah, look, at first I really like I went into the movie going, I'm gonna hate him. I mean, I think I even said to you, I'm like, I just know I'm gonna hate Cole Young because it's just
we all did,
and like still like although by the end I thought like what they did with him was good, and I thought the backstory they gave him and everything was actually quite good, but he was just such a flat character. Like I feel like if they gave him more personality, then I would have enjoyed him overall a lot more. But I did like him more than I thought I would, which I guess is saying something. But he's just, you don't need him. He's just unnecessary.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that at the beginning I was like, this is fine. Like, I haven't got any issues with him. But as the movie progresses, there's just nothing that really happens to him that's that impactful. You know, you don't really get to know his family well enough. At one point, you know, he mentioned how there's this girl with him, this young girl, and it's like, it's his daughter. And I was like, that's his daughter? I thought that was his sister. Like, because he looks so young and she looked, you know, like a teenager that I was completely thrown.
I also thought it was his sister as well, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a minute detail, but it's something that really throws you off. But, you know, eventually he gets powers, and I know we'll get into that as well later on, because that's one of my biggest criticisms of the movie, is what they call arcana. But yeah, it just didn't do much for me, and again, I didn't know why they didn't just use Liu Kang. But I guess they felt as though they wanted to try and do something new and exciting. And maybe Liu Kang wasn't new and exciting enough, but I don't know, I just wasn't really drawn to him as a protagonist. Outside of that, they obviously tie a big plot point to his character that it seems everyone has, which is like, they all have these tattoos of a dragon on them. And if you have the tattoo of a dragon, it means that you're basically destined to fight in the MK tournament. And that's how this story springboards. After, of course, the opening, which is the best part of the entire film, which gives you the origins of Scorpion. And that scene works so well, by the way, because there's very little CG, and what CG there is complements the character of Sub-Zero in that moment. And of course, it's also the footage that you see online. Like, you could go and watch the first 7 minutes of the movie, and that's exactly what the start of the movie is, because it's the best part of the whole movie. So I guess they were trying to loop people in with that. But the whole tattoo situation, it just seemed a little stupid, if I'm being honest. I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought it was pretty dumb.
Yeah, I'll start by saying, like, I felt like it was really... although I didn't watch the first 7 minutes, because why would I spoil the movie for myself, and I'm gonna go
No,
see
I didn't either. Yeah, I thought that was really stupid.
But yeah, as soon as I saw that upload that, I'm like, okay, so the start of the movie is good. They know that, so clearly there's something wrong with the rest of the movie. Otherwise, why would you even upload it to try and vote people in? It's just such a weird idea. So that kind of got me. That kind of got me concerned. Yeah. Yeah. No, the tattoos, even in the trailer, where it's like, I didn't actually know every character was gonna have one, because they show in the trailer that Cole Young has one. It's like, okay, so he's like some sort of chosen one, I guess, instead of Liu Kang. Was how I interpreted it from the trailer. And then yeah, you watch the movie and they all have them, and then like, if you kill someone that has one, you get one, and that's the only way you're qualified to enter the tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't. All these video game movies do the same thing, where they feel like they need to just add something just crazy, like off their own. Like,
that's what I was about to say. It's like you're adding needless crap to the film, and you don't need to add it. But yeah, go on.
I mean, that's fine. I don't think it doesn't really ruin anything, I feel like, but it's kind of weird because now Sonya Blade has powers, and that's just weird to me. It's kind of like you're making them all superheroes when that's not how it works. And I don't know if they're doing that to like explain why they can get beat up and try and make it more realistic, but like, it's Mortal Kombat. Why does it need to be realistic? And on that note, I would just like to say all the characters take themselves way too seriously in this movie, except for Kano. Kano's the only character that acts like a Mortal Kombat character, and everyone's saying that's their favorite part of the movie. Well, I wonder why.
Yeah, because even Liu Kang and Kung Lao and Sonya and all these other... Maybe Sonya's probably the sternest of the lot, honestly, in terms of the games. But everybody else is not so straight-faced. Do you know what I mean? Like, even Liu Kang and Kung Lao have this kind of camaraderie and buddy cop-esque thing. Obviously, they're not cops, but you know what I mean? They've got this partnership in the games, and they kind of bounce off of each other with some nice banter. And obviously you don't get that here because the story is so focused on Cole. But it just seems like everyone's taking it, as you say, so seriously, except for Kano. And it seems to me that although Kano is doing, and Josh Lawson, the actor, is doing a fantastic job, the decision to exclude Johnny Cage becomes so obvious when you feel as though he could have easily filled that role. You know what I mean? Like, he should have been that person, not Kano. That's not saying I didn't hate Josh Lawson as Kano, it's just that if they had used Johnny, it would have made a lot more sense.
Oh, I think Johnny should have been there instead of Cole Young. I think Kano was good because it's kind of obvious he's going to betray them, but it was still like, it was done pretty well. And then it's a shame when he leaves. But I feel like Johnny Cage should have just been the main character because he's the one that brings you from the real world into the Mortal Kombat world. Like, that's the role of the character in the games and in the original movie. So I don't understand why he still could be in the role. And you could have Ken as well. Like, you can have two funny characters, and then they could have had banter together as well. That would have lifted it even more. I feel like there wasn't enough. Like, I know Kano was a lot, but it's just but that's why I feel like you laugh extra hard at everything he says, because everything else is just so flat and boring. And like you said, Liu Kang and Kung Lao was so... it's like the fun was sucked out of every character and put into Kano, and no one else was fun. At all.
Yeah,
even
obviously everyone else is underutilized. Yeah, like you said, it seems as though everybody is just I guess you could say, shadow of their former selves, right? You look at the games and there's just so much more life there. And I feel like, as I've said to you after we finished the movie, I think that this movie needed to be an Avengers level or Justice League level film where Raiden played the role of the Nick Fury or the Bruce Wayne, and he went and gathered everybody and brought them to Shang Tsung's island for the tournament. That should have been the film, right? And without the Cole Young stuff, if you had taken that out of the movie, I feel like it would have left more time to develop Sonya, more time to develop Johnny, more time to develop Liu Kang and Kung Lao, and I want to say that I don't hate the inclusion of Jax, but again, his Arcana is just it's probably the worst one, if I'm being honest. The fact that his power is that he just grows metal arms. They give him these skeletal arms that are just made out of I don't know, iron or something, and then all of a sudden he activates his magic and he grows metal out of nowhere and gets his cybernetic arms. And again, it's just needless stuff, like you said before, where they're just adding fluff for the sake of it, when they could have just been like, hey, guess what, he got his arms chopped off or something, and we just stuck cybernetic arms on him, which basically is what happens in the games. And I don't see why you need to describe this whole magic thing about it and the tattoos. You could have just been like, this is what it is, done. You don't need to explain that Kung Lao and Liu Kang have these powers. You just say, Liu Kang's the chosen one, that's how he has fire powers. Kung Lao's the descendant of the great Kung Lao, that's how he can do that, the hat tricks and whatnot, you know what I mean? You don't need to go into all this detail. But definitely, sorry, I know I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but jumping back to the Avengers-style stuff, I feel like that just would have made more sense. And that way there isn't necessarily a set main protagonist. It's not like Liu Kang is the main guy or Sonya's the main chick. It's no, you have a group of people and each of them have a shared amount of screen time, and that way you can get to know them a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But also, yeah, speaking of the Arcana, whatever the hell it's called, like they made a big deal that it was really hard to unlock your powers and stuff. But even the writers gave up on it because when Sonya kills Kano, and then she comes and she has her powers straight away. How did she get her powers? She didn't train.
Yeah. Again, it's the whole movie though is full of moments like that, right? Where it's just moments happen that make no sense.
The thing I hated, so I have to say before I forget, the thing I hated the most was when Cole's like to Raiden, oh, so you can teleport anyone anywhere, and he's like, yeah, and I was like, okay, so then why did they ever even step foot at his temple then if he can just teleport them away?
Yeah, that's the part that makes no sense.
What do you mean you can teleport anyone? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it makes no sense when you have this tattoo subplot and arcana thing where everybody has magical powers as opposed to, tech abilities or just, something they're born with that's activated through combat or something like a Liu Kang or a Kung Lao. And you've removed the idea of there actually being a tournament in the first place, right? This movie's called Mortal Kombat, but the Mortal Kombat tournament does not happen.
I actually don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people do, but I thought it was an interesting idea to like have Shang Tsung like try and cheat and kill them before the tournament started because that's something he would do. So I didn't hate it, and to me that wasn't a problem. And obviously they're gonna have the tournament in like the future.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It didn't, and then at least Johnny Cage will beat the first tournament, so that I like.
I know. But what I was gonna say was just the fact that for me, it just ruins the movie because it's like you can fix a lot of its problems, like you just said about Raiden being able to teleport people, when Raiden could have just gathered everybody and said, right, there's a tournament that's about to happen on an island, I'm gonna assemble you all, teleport you to this specific location, and then we can just go from there. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the original movie, they all gather at this boat, and then they all jump on the boat and sail to Shang Tsung's island. And to me, that's fine, and it works for that film, and I feel like the same thing could have happened here, where instead of it being like, oh, you know what, we're gonna have no tournament at all, and instead we're gonna kill off a bunch of people who some aren't given any backstory, and it's just gonna ruin any potential sequel, right? Like, I feel like the biggest person, or at least the person with the missed opportunities here, was Melina. Because to me, it's difficult to tell a Mortal Kombat story without at least giving context to who or what Melina is. And the fact that this film doesn't feature or mention Katana is a huge problem. I don't know if you agree, because to me it's kind of like, you can't really tell audiences this is Melina without being like, oh, hang on a second, she's actually a clone of this other character. And the fact that she's even present at all is a shock to Raiden and to all these other people because they have no idea she exists, right? And, Katana's a princess, for crying out loud. You know what I mean?
I think it's a huge problem, and, like, clearly Liu Kang doesn't even know who Katana is at this point, right? And it's just... It's really weird, and I thought all the villains were kind of random. I'm like, why is Cabal, like, already here as well? Which, actually, they did a good job with him, but I actually didn't mind him. He was pretty funny too.
Yeah, I actually really liked Cabal.
He looks cool too, but I was like, why is he here? It doesn't make sense. And like, there's like this whole like backstory with Kano and him, and like the Black Dragon's already like fallen apart. I'm like, okay, but why are you skipping over that? It's like important, and I just feel like they took things from the lore and like just mixed it in. It's like, oh, it already happened and this happened, and it's all just shuffled together like randomly, and it doesn't make sense. Because the whole time,
like
they were mentioning things, and I was like trying to think, okay, well, I know when that happens in the game, but why is it in this movie? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
and that happened a lot.
As I said, this movie has a lot of, this works as a movie, but does it work as an adaptation? Does that make sense? Like, there are aspects of it that are movie-based, like the CGI, which we've said in conversation after the movie
I
was
think that's
not
the budget, though.
right. Yeah, that's the budget. There's a lot of stuff, and I think Johnny Cage not being present in this movie can be attributed to the budget, because they probably wanted a big actor to play that role, and they felt as though they couldn't fork out the cash to actually get somebody, right? And that I can understand. But without Johnny, even if you just got someone who was a lesser-known actor, like a Scott Adkins, who's a pretty famous stuntman / actor, I feel like he could have easily filled that role. But to me, the villains suffered quite a lot in this movie. Because like you said, the Cabal stuff is really cool, and Cabal is good. I actually really liked Cabal in this movie. He looked great, like you said, and his fight scenes with Liu Kang weren't bad because the CGI wasn't necessarily so noticeable, right? Like, there are other characters where the CGI is like, okay, that's not good at all. But because you get others like Kung Lao and the Cabal who are mostly practical, and then you have a little bit of CG being used, it's not so bad. But other villains, like the inclusion of Natara and Reiko, they're literally throwaway, and I didn't even know why they're in the film. The use of Reptile in this movie, his design is just, it's bad. Like, it's bad. Like, the CG on him is fine, but the use of Reptile in the movie was just not good. Like, in the games, you see Reptile, and he's basically a combination of effectively a humanoid, so a human crossed with a reptile, so that he can still fight and pull off moves and stuff like that. But in this, he's literally just a lizard on all fours, and it comes across as just kind of dumb. And he's very much he's there for 5 minutes and he's gone. And then a character like Shang Tsung, who is so good in the original movie, like Cary Tagawa in the first Mortal Kombat film from 1995, and even in MK11 where they used the same person again, is just so good at filling that role. Because yes, he's over the top, but his line delivery is so on point that you can believe that he's basically just this crazy kung fu action bad guy. Whereas in this film, he just comes across as, hi, I'm Shang Tsung, and I'm just evil, but I'm not really that convincing. I'm not intimidated by Shang Tsung in this movie, is what I'm trying to say. I am intimidated by Sub-Zero, and I'll give Sub-Zero credit. He's fantastic in this film, albeit they do kind of just outrightly say, he's a bad guy. And for those of us who are familiar with the lore, we know he's not a bad guy. We know there's other reasons for why he's doing what he's doing, and I'm sure we're probably about to get into that, because there are some key elements of the Mortal Kombat lore that are kind of left on the cutting room floor here. And I don't know how you feel about the exclusion of Quan Chi, because that was the one thing that bothered me.
Hang on, because you've been talking for 5 minutes and I had stuff to say about the CGI.
I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say that, I don't understand why Natara was even in the movie if they couldn't make her look good. That really pissed me off, especially considering they literally killed her in 2 seconds. Why was she even in the movie?
I don't know. I really don't know.
That really annoyed me. I was like, okay, if you know you don't have the budget and it's going to look like shit, then why don't you just have another character? I mean, who even is that? What's the obsession with bringing her in? Because they put her in the animated one, Scorpion's Revenge as well, and as like a cameo. Yeah. I don't understand why they're trying to make this character a big deal.
Well, I don't get it, because if you're going to waste a scene with Reptile, why not have Reptile be there instead of Reiko or Natara, right? Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with... I know you really hate Reptile. I didn't really care that it was like a big lizard thing, because they're like a race and there's a lot of them. So they still might have one that goes into like a human form and fights. Like, that could still happen.
True.
Right? Because it's just one of them. He's like send in the reptilian or whatever. So so that didn't really bother me, because they can still use actual humanoid reptile in the future if they want to. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. So, I thought the CGI on Goro looked really good, actually. But again, they wasted the character.
Yeah.
So it's like, what was the point? I feel like all the villains were really wasted. And and about Melina, that's the most confusing thing they put in the movie was Melina. Out of everything, that is the weirdest thing. And like you said, you're not mentioning like who she is, where she comes from. Characters have no like reaction to it. It's so stupid. Like, are they gonna explain it? Is there gonna be like another clone? Is like, are there gonna be like multiple?
Yeah, I
clones?
guess they
Like,
could do that, right? They could just be like, "Hey,
that's
she's
what I'm
back."
thinking.
Yeah, that's I didn't consider that until now. But you're right about Reptile and Melina. They could easily just be like, "Hey, look, it's another clone of Katana," or "Hey, look, it's another species that's the same as Reptile, and we're just gonna use a different skin and be like, here they are. This is the version you wanted in the first movie, but we couldn't do it. No, you're definitely right about that. Yeah. I don't know. It's to me, it's too much that they're trying to do for no apparent reason, right? Like we talked about this with the tattoos, and we talked about this with the powers, and we talked about this with the inclusion of Cole Young. That if you took Cole Young out of this movie, if you took Jax out of this movie, if you took Kung Lao out of this movie, even though I don't really want them to, but if you did, right? And if your main heroes were Johnny, Sonya, Liu Kang, and Katana. Let's say you put Katana in the movie, because I feel like you kind of have to if you're going to put Melina in it, right? You at least want to have a female antagonist to go along with a female protagonist. And if you're going to put Melina in the movie, then you definitely have to have Katana. So let's say we got rid of Kung Lao and put Katana in instead. And then your villains will say Melina, Reptile. I feel like Baraka deserves a shot. But I guess if you're going to have one person with razor-sharp teeth, then you can't really put another person with razor-sharp teeth. But then you're going to have Goro, right? Like, Goro's got to be in this movie. And like you said, the CGI with Goro was good, but how they ended up actually using him was a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, but speaking about characters coming back, well, you see, Shang Tsung says like, "Oh, death is just another portal," or some crap like that, and Sub-Zero gets sucked into the game. Like, okay, is he going to become like Noob Saibot? Because that would be pretty cool if they had him in the movie. Is this the one that becomes Noob? Right?
Yes, he is. Yeah, Bihan.
Yeah. Okay. And you see, like when he takes off his armor, he has like the black costume underneath, so he pretty much looked like Noob Saibot.
Yeah.
So I'm actually pretty excited about that. That would be really cool because I thought if one effect looked really good in this movie, it was the teleporting. Like Kung Lao's teleport and Melina looked like really good. Like I really liked when he teleported under the hat. I thought that looked exactly like the game, and I really loved it.
Yeah, along with the ice, that stuff looked really good as well. I liked Sub-Zero's ice a lot.
And then, it was good. And then they cut to Goro getting sucked into the ground as well. Like, not anyone else, just Sub-Zero, which made sense. And then Goro, I'm like, okay, so what are they doing with Goro? Are they going to make him, like, some zombie Goro or something? Like, what are they doing there? I thought that was weird.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to that stuff, honestly.
Yeah. No, because Sub-Zero gets sucked in the ground. Like, okay, he's saying about death, so obviously he's going to become Noob Saibot. But then, it cuts to Goro getting sucked in the ground. It cuts back to, like, out front of the house, and he gets pulled in by the smoke. And I thought that was weird that it specifically showed him getting sucked in, and like not like Melina or anyone. So I think it's implied that they're bringing Goro back somehow
in a sequel. Yeah, and maybe in that sequel they could introduce Quan Chi, right? And they could say he's the one responsible for resurrecting all these characters who have died in this movie. Do you know what I mean? And I guess that would make sense. Like if you're gonna bring Quan Chi into it, and you're going to be like, he's the one who brings Goro back. He's the one that brings Sub-Zero back as Noob. And, again, I don't really think you need to bring Melina back. You could honestly just be like, here's another clone, like we said, and here's another, reptile. But yeah, Quan Chi could definitely be in a sequel. I just felt like he deserved a cameo in this movie, but go on.
I predicted that he wasn't going to be in it. Because I felt like before going in, I'm like, it might be too much for like casual viewers. Like, I don't like. It's a lot to squeeze into the movie because I knew they would be trying to squeeze in a lot already. So actually, my friend who we saw it with, he said to me, he's like, "Oh, do you reckon like Quan Chi's going to be in it? It's going to show?" And I said, "Well, fans know how Scorpion comes back, so I said I reckon he's going to die at the start, and then he's just going to appear later on as Scorpion." And that's exactly what happened in the movie. So I pretty much called that. So it didn't bother me because I already knew they weren't going to put Quan Chi in. Would I have liked to see him? Maybe. I don't know. It almost felt like they're not going to use that.
I don't know. My thing with it is this, that certain characters I don't think need to play major roles in this movie, but they just needed to have some sort of cameo, right? Like, for example, Quan Chi. Does he need to play a major role in this film? No. But if the movie had begun, which it does, with the death of Scorpion, and then all of a sudden Quan Chi walks into the scene and takes him into the Netherrealm or something, right? I don't feel as though you needed more of that. As long as you let us know, right, Quan Chi's there, he's made an appearance, something has just happened. The audience can then infer, when Scorpion returns, that this person, whoever he may be, has resurrected this other person, right? Do you know what I mean?
But Scorpion makes a comment. He says, "Oh, you thought like the hellfire would consume me, but instead I learned how to control it." So he made it sound like he did it himself.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? But again, doesn't Quan Chi kind of like trick him as well? I can't remember in the animated one because it's kind of like.
So from what I recall about the MK lore, Quan Chi basically is responsible for the death of Hanzo's clan and family. He's the one responsible, not Sub-Zero. Because much like Shang Tsung, he can change his appearance. Or him and Shang Tsung work together. I can't really remember. But it's something like...
Quan Chi pretends to be...
Sub-Zero. Yeah, so...
Scorpion? No, Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero, yeah. So he's the one who's responsible for it. And he basically makes a deal with Scorpion and says, if you serve me as my Spectre, so my henchman, then I will grant you revenge against Sub-Zero. And that revenge is meant to be exacted in the Mortal Kombat tournament. Right? It's like, I'll give you that opportunity if you do this for me. And that's basically the whole reason for it. And I don't feel like that's something that needed to be excluded because it's pretty easy, right? It's not like it's that difficult to show a scene like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could have literally, as I said, just had Quan Chi approach Hanzo's body and maybe, like, touched him or something like that, and then Hanzo, like, woke up or something, or immediately resurrected, and, you know, he could have basically said to him, you know what, if you do this, 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 and this for me, I'll let you get revenge against this person. Do you know what I mean? Or it could have been shown in some later scene in the film. Regardless, I feel as though the exclusion of that information is key, because if you were to make a sequel, then you need to explain the younger brother, Kuai Liang, to Sub-Zero's younger brother, Kuai Liang, who obviously is not in this movie. I know it's a bit confusing for some people, because you've got two Sub-Zeros. The older brother is in this movie, but the younger brother is the Sub-Zero who will probably appear in future films. But you need to give some sort of backstory there, because how else are you going to explain these two characters later making amends? Do you know what I mean?
I think if they do like another, like, they'll probably bring both the characters back at the same time. They'll probably just start the movie off with like Scorpion in hell and Quan Chi's there, and he's like, oh, you know, whatever, like, I gave you the revenge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then they could easily cut to Sub-Zero's brother, or they could even just have the tournament and he's there and you don't know, and it's like a surprise. Yeah. And then because don't they do that in the game, and he's like, and he tells him who I am, he's like, oh, I'm the brother.
Yeah, exactly. He does. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it's not too late. They can easily retcon themselves and put that stuff in. Like, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. Adding Quan Chi, like, it's pretty easy to add in a future film.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they want to keep a surprise, but it almost seemed like they were changing Scorpion.
Yeah.
That he came back himself and Quan Chi's not involved. That is definitely how
I saw it too.
Understood it. Yeah, and I mean, these are two like massively popular characters. Like, if you ask someone about Mortal Kombat, you say, who do you think the main character is? If they've never played the games, they're gonna say Scorpion, Sub-Zero, because I guarantee they know those two character names and they've seen them on the cover of every game.
Yeah.
Right? So they're not the main characters, but a lot of people think they are. And to change their backstory probably isn't a good idea, I think, because like they're so like beloved, and their fight scenes were obviously like the two like coolest fight scenes in the movie.
I agree. Yeah, they were.
And so I mean, they have to be careful not to mess with them too much because they're gonna piss people
Well,
off.
that was the problem, right? Like, I don't think it pissed me off. It was just like,
Yeah, not yet, but I'm saying like in the future,
Yeah.
if they like stick to these changes, I think people are gonna be like, why didn't you just have Quan Chi?
that's what I don't get.
I mean, I don't think I'll care too much, but I can see why people would.
Well, as I've said to you, why I care isn't because of how they could screw it up in a sequel. It's because of if this was the only Mortal Kombat movie we were going to get, right? Because for some reason or another it didn't make a huge amount of money, then you would want to be sure that you got things right. You know what I mean? You would want to be sure that you got the story aspect of this film right, so that fans would recognize all these little moments and why everything is kind of falling in the way that it is. And since the introduction of Cole Young, you're prioritizing a new character and sidelining other people and other story elements that would otherwise elevate this movie. Because to me, Mortal Kombat, once you've actually played it, the story plays a huge part, right? It's a huge part of this narrative. And without information like that, it just feels like it's boiled down to, here's Scorpion at the beginning of the movie, and for those of you who haven't seen the film, he literally just pops up at the end. He literally just appears out of nowhere at the end, and the excuse is that Cole has somehow saved him, or reawakened him, or brought him back from hell, or something like that, and...
Yeah, slicing his hand on the spear.
Yeah,
Like
it's
his blood.
very paper
His
thin.
blood like brought him back.
Yeah, it's extremely gimmicky, and it's just like the writers basically said, oh, how do we bring Scorpion into this movie so he can fight Sub-Zero at the very end of it? How about we just do this? And you're kind of like, alright. And again, that's excluding a huge part of the film as well, that Cole is like a descendant of Scorpion, or Hanzo, and that doesn't really play a role in the film besides, as I just said, Scorpion coming back at the end of it. So, the inclusion of his character, I feel like, just impedes upon everything else that could have happened in this movie. To the point where I literally said to my girlfriend, I was like, Liu Kang has a moment in this movie where he talks about his backstory, like he was like a kid on the streets of Hong Kong, and he was found by Master Bo Rai Cho, and then he was brought to the Shaolin Temple where he was trained and stuff like that with Kung Lao, and I was like, that is immediately way more interesting than Cole. Immediately, I'm like,
no,
I want to see that. I don't want to see all this UFC fighter stuff. I want to see that.
It's also knowing how like have Cole Young the main character, and then his power, his arcana, is literally plot armor, like literal plot armor wrapped around him.
He just has
They
armor,
punch him and he doesn't get hurt. I'm like, are you joking?
And again, at first I thought it was like he was getting Black Panther's suit because it was like glowing, and I thought
He does. He does have it. He absorbs energy and he puts it back out. It is like Black Panther because he did it once. Remember, he's like, I'll use the uppercut or like whatever. Remember, and he does the
he punches
uppercut and,
Goro.
like, goes all yeah. So it actually is like Black Panther's suit, and then he has the two like spear things, which is kind of like Baraka. He has the two like stabby poles.
Yeah, I don't get it. Again, it's just these little things where I'm like, why did you do that?
His power should have been like akin to Scorpion's powers since the Descendant. I would have preferred that so much more. Like, and he had the spear. I'm like, oh, cool. He's gonna have like the rope dart too. It's like, nah, just kidding.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded it.
He just keeps it in his back pocket and cuts his hand on it.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't have minded it if he became some new version of Scorpion. Like, I actually wouldn't have hated it that much. I would have been like, oh, okay. I mean, that's definitely a huge departure from the games, but it's not like it would have bothered me all that much, right? At least it would have been like, okay, that sort of makes sense, but instead of that, you obviously get the armor stuff.
I think what the problem is, they've added so much and changed so much, and yet they took no risks. Like, it sounds stupid, but it's true. Like, where's the risks in this movie? Like, the 90s one took so many chances. Like, they did some crazy shit to the characters. But still, everyone loves it. I feel like here they made, like, minor in some cases annoying changes that don't feel necessary, instead of anything that was like, oh, here's like a big chance we're taking.
Yeah.
This is how we want the character to be.
It makes me
Instead, it's like, oh, this character's not as interesting.
Yeah,
That's their change.
I know. What I was going to say was it makes me think that because there are so many games that they just didn't know what to adapt or how to adapt it. And when you...
Yeah, that's the interesting part, because like they've clearly done their research and they're clearly fans, because there's even references to like the gameplay when Liu Kang trips Kano over. It's like he's spamming like down kick, and then Kano does a short hop, but he times it wrong, and he goes, "Oh fuck!" and then he gets tripped again. It's like something that would happen like in the game. So I thought that was really funny. So I'm like, okay, so they've obviously played the games and they know what they're doing, and yet, why does it feel like they don't know the story of the game?
I think
it almost feels like they've like read like the bios of the character and done their own thing with it.
Yeah, well, that's like every video game movie, though, right? Like, you go to Resident Evil and it's the same story. I guess for me here, though, it was just a matter of, if you go back to that 95 movie, they only had MK1 and 2 as source material. And even then, they were able to do so much whilst keeping it simple. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't trying to be anything other than this cheesy 90s action film. I mean, obviously it's not trying to be a 90s action film because it's just released in the 90s, but it's just an action movie with some kung fu in it, and it's got some pretty stereotypical stuff, and a lot of the CGI is pretty bad in it, but there's also some practical stuff that also looks really good, and the soundtrack is amazing, whereas the soundtrack in the new movie is really bland. Like, I thought they were going to use at least the MK theme a lot more, but you only hear it in, like, the end credits, and you hear
I knew they were going to use it until the credits.
Yeah, I knew they were, but, like, I thought maybe in the Scorpion Sub-Zero fight they would use the original theme, but back to the point I was saying.
Like I said, they're not
sorry.
brave enough to do stuff like that.
I know. I just feel like keeping it simple is better than trying to do all this other stuff. Again, it's what we talked about with so many other movies. I mean, it happened when I talked about Kong versus Godzilla, or Godzilla versus Kong, whatever it was called. Like, the fact that they were trying to make this massive narrative out of just two monsters fighting each other. It's the same story here. It's like, you don't need to have this whole list of characters in the movie. Sure, fans are going to be like, oh man, I want to see Jax, and I want to see Kung Lao, and I want to see Reptile, and all these other people. But at the end of the day, if you're making a Mortal Kombat movie that's based on, or it's meant to be based on, the first tournament, or at least the early stages of this universe, then there's only a few characters that were really prevalent at this moment, right? And I feel like if you had stuck to the first game's roster and included a couple of others from the second game, rather than trying to throw in all these other elements, it just would have worked a hell of a lot more. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the original film, it's not perfect. But you know what? You set it on Shang Tsung's island, you keep most of the main characters the same, and the things that need improvement are the CGI and the fight scenes, and maybe more character work so that you care a little bit more. But besides that, it just feels like there was this need to, let's do something completely unique. And it's like, it's not that unique, because the main character, is really boring. And you've just chucked a bunch of bad CGI into the film, and misused certain characters and excluded key pieces of information. You know?
Actually, and there is like one thing that I thought was like the cheesiest part of the movie, and it's probably the one reason that I really hate that they didn't do a tournament.
Yeah.
Was like, even though it wasn't a tournament and there's no announcer, they felt the need to say fatality and flawless victory. But the really awkward part is the character that does the move just says it, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. So it does it to Natara when Kung Lao cuts her, and then he goes flawless victory, and then I'm like, what? That makes no sense. Why would you just say that out loud? And it's not Shang Tsung saying it. It's so annoying. And then Liu Kang does the dragon on Cabal, and he goes, fatality for Kung Lao or whatever. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I know. It is really dumb, and
I
again,
really hated that. It's like, I hated it.
and the first movie's dumb, but it's dumb because it works as a 90s film. Do you know what I mean? That's a 26-year-old
At least Shang
movie.
Tsung's the one that says fatality and finish him.
Yeah, and like I said earlier,
Stuff like
Shang
that.
Tsung is really good in that original movie, and the chemistry between the
I
three...
think they
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. They should have got the. They should have just got the same actor. Actually,
God. I
I had
thought
a
the
fan
same
casting
thing.
that. I have a fan casting that Donnie Yen would have been a really good Shang Tsung. But I mean, I don't know. I just again, it's not necessarily the actor's fault. He had nothing to work with. Like, there's Shang Tsung does nothing in this movie.
Yeah, I thought they were at least going to have a fight scene between even Shang Tsung and Liu Kang, or even like Shang Tsung and Raiden. Like, Raiden is so underutilized in this movie, and I know he is in the original film as well, but at least he has some really funny one-liners in the original film, and he has a bit of character. But there are moments in this movie where I not only can't understand Raiden, because I'm sorry, the actor's English accent, no, not English accent, but his attempts to speak English, and there's no offense to him, it's just not good. I can't understand what you're saying, man.
I don't know, I kind of like that. I liked the Raiden. I didn't like Raiden's look, but I actually liked when he spoke. It was actually pretty convincing. But again, Raiden was underutilized in this movie as well.
That's more of my
He has the
point.
same problem Shang Tsung has. They're both just pretty pointless.
They're just there. Like Shang Tsung's the main villain, but at no point was I intimidated by him like I was with not Shang Tsung, with Sub-Zero, right? And Raiden is meant to be like the most powerful one out of the lot of them, and he just stands around, teleports people, puts up barriers, and shoots lightning at the end of the movie, and that's basically it. There's nothing else they do with him.
There's no scene that really says, this is a god, you should fear him.
Yeah,
No,
and I feel like if there was maybe a villain in the background pulling the strings a little bit, like maybe if Quan Chi was in the background, then you could have had a moment where he was trying to do something, almost like, I know it sounds dumb, but almost like Professor Quirrell in like the first Harry Potter movie, where he's trying to do something in the background and no one else is noticing, and then Raiden almost jumps in and there's like a small fight scene between the two of them, you know what I mean? And because obviously Raiden can't interfere with the two realms, both Outworld and Earthrealm, fighting, but there's nothing saying that he can't do it when the Netherrealm, because Quan Chi represents the Netherrealm, steps in. I know it sounds kind of nerdy and stuff like that, but it's just like, I feel like if you're examining the 95 movie and you know that Raiden is underutilized in that film, then surely you would have looked in your new film and been like, right, we have to get Raiden to do something. You know?
He never even consults with the Elder Gods.
That's true, he doesn't. I'm trying to think if there's anything
and he's never there when he needs to be. Like, how did Kano blow up the staff? Like, how did that in a million years even happen?
Yeah, it's a bit dumb, isn't
Where was Raiden?
it? Just for context, yeah, he blows up the staff that's meant to be projecting this barrier around the temple. I don't even know what temple it was, to be honest with you, because in the games, the Shaolin Temple is literally the Shaolin Temple, so it's on like a mountain or something. It looks really beautiful and whatnot. And then there's the Sky Temple.
This is like an underground,
and it's
underground hideout.
I was going to say, there's literally another place called the Sky Temple, which is literally located at the peak of this mountain. It's literally in the sky, hence its title. And in this, it's like, you can tell, again, budget constraints, because they're training in this cave system underneath the ground, and it's a bit like, huh? Like, what? Just a bit weird choices. Again, movie of weird stuff.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, I'm trying to think of anything else that sort of caught me off guard in this movie. Don't get me wrong, there's positives.
How about some more positives?
There's
Yeah.
positives. The action is good. Most of the action in this movie is good. Some of the cuts are a bit fast paced at times, but I thought most of it was pretty fun, and I had a good time with it. we mentioned Kano. Kano is the highlight of the whole movie. For me, Sub-Zero was, besides him being just this straight-up villain, I thought he was really well done. I enjoyed Sub-Zero. His powers looked great. He was really menacing. The first 10 minutes of the film were really good, and I thought Scorpion looked the part. My girlfriend did make a joke, though, that at the end of it, the fight between them did look like two guys in cosplay just kind of beating the crap out of each other. And I do think they could have simplified Scorpion's outfit a little bit. They tried to go for like an MK11 look, and I feel like they just honestly could have made him look more like Sub-Zero, but with a yellow aesthetic.
I thought he looks cool. I like the hood. Again, it's similar to like superheroes, though. Of course, it's like if you go, oh, this is kind of silly. Like if you really analyze it, but maybe because the rest of the movie didn't do that.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
what I
like
think.
they should have just gone over the top from the get go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's just the
Would've helped
comparison
a lot.
between the two. It doesn't really contrast very well.
I actually
Besides
thought Scorpion. I thought Scorpion was the best cast. I thought he looked the part the most, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I thought some of the other casting choices were a bit awkward.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a bit half and half. Like, Sonya was like, like, as a character, like, she was fine, and she was okay.
I think that they just made her like too serious. I know that's the character, but you could have done a bit more with her. I thought the casting was good, though.
Yeah, her like, subplot, though, of, like, she wants to get the dragon mark on her so she could fight in the tournament, but everyone, like, belittles her because she doesn't have it, was a bit stupid. Like, I felt like it was getting a bit dumb. It was like, okay, we get it. I understand what you're going for here, but yeah, I think you're pushing it a little bit hard.
I thought it would have been more interesting because I thought it was leading to a tournament in a movie, to be honest. And I thought it would have been interesting if Sonya got there kind of illegally. Do you know what I mean? Like she kind of snuck in and then she ended up fighting. I thought that would have been a lot more interesting. And then you have like this normal human character. But no, they had to make her purple rings her superpower, and I just think that's stupid.
Yeah, again, like I said, this stuff doesn't need explaining. We said it at the beginning of this podcast that you could just be like, right, that's just the tech they have. You know what I mean? Like, Jax gets cybernetic arms, Sonya has this technology, these braces or whatever that she shoots. That's what she's got. You don't need to explain it. Just keep it simple, guys. Again, I didn't hate Cole. He was fine. He was okay. His power was dumb, but his character is just fine. Jax, the actor for Jax, I thought was good. Again, it's just their powers, you know. Some of these characters and their arcana just is dumb. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. That's the problem. Like, it's not like there's people who are miscast across the board. It's just that the writing and the way that they use their abilities just comes across as really stupid at times. And again, people can have excuses like it's a video game movie and stuff like that, but it's the same excuses I've seen for every other movie, regardless of whether or not it's video game.
Yeah, I don't like the philosophy that you can't make a good video game movie. I just feel like it almost just seems like then they're purposely making bad ones. That's what it feels like, because for some reason they just feel the need to inject all this crap in. Like, why can't you just stick to the source material? I just don't understand. You can still be original and also be heavily inspired by what came before. I don't understand the problem.
Well, it's like the same excuses people use for kids' movies, like Minions or something like that, right? It's like, oh, you know, it might be stupid, but it's for kids. Or, oh, Kong vs. Godzilla was really fun. The plot was absolute garbage, but you know what? It's just about two monsters fighting each other, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. It's like, what? What is your scale? How do you determine what is good and what is not good? Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's
not how my scale works.
It's like, to me, with this, it's that idea, like you just said, of, oh, most video game movies are bad, so the bad elements of this movie I can forgive because that's just that's what the rest of these movies are like. It's like, huh? What? Like, I don't have that same scale if I was to watch a Marvel movie and go, oh, this Marvel movie is like every other Marvel movie, so therefore that's okay because, you know, it's just the same formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you shouldn't lower your standards for a certain type of movie. Unless, maybe like a cheesy comedy, but I think video game movies, especially when they're clearly trying to they want you to take them seriously, well, I think they need to up their game. And all I'm gonna say is everyone should tune into the Uncharted review when we do it, because I'm gonna be very pissed. I can tell you.
I think you're already pissed off even without the movie coming out.
Yeah, because I know, because they're gonna do the same shit.
Well, it's like with this, right? We were already disappointed when, like I said, we saw the synopses, we saw aspects of the trailer, and it was just like, okay, some of this looks fine, some of this sounds okay, but all these other things just don't work. Like, this does not sound good.
Wait.
And what? What?
Oh no, I was gonna say, sorry, just no, because the trailer. I was just gonna chime in and say they fixed the "get over here" that Scorpion does, because in the trailer it was just like his voice saying "get over here," but they made it like an effect in the final cut, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I didn't even know. Again, I didn't even notice it, because at that point in the movie, I was just like, okay, we're just doing a fight scene, cool. Like, I don't really pay attention when I'm just seeing a fight scene, right? But that's fine. Again, though, it's just it's just hard to describe this movie and even recommend it to people, because if you are a fan of Mortal Kombat, I don't think you're gonna enjoy this movie a huge amount. Like, you'll like me, you'll enjoy some of it, but you won't enjoy all of it. And the aspects of it that are just movie aspects, like the stuff that they've just added on top, like the Cole Young stuff, is fine. It's okay. But when I say it's okay, I don't mean like, oh, it's okay and therefore it's a 4 out of 10. Because I know a lot of people's rating scales are usually, if something's okay, it's a 4 out of 10. Or if something's a good movie, it therefore has to be an 8 out of 10. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that's a really skewed scale that doesn't really work. So if I was to say this to the everyday person, I would be like, look, if you've played the Mortal Kombat games before, you're going to get some enjoyment out of this, but not a huge amount, because it's not that true to the source material. If you're somebody who's never played a Mortal Kombat game, then you probably will enjoy this more, but I don't know if you'll enjoy it that much more, because as we've mentioned, the CGI is still lacking, the acting isn't always there, the dialogue isn't always there, the story is just kind of
Wait, so that's a really good point you bring up. Who is this movie for? Because I feel like if you're not a fan, it's pretty confusing. Because at least, like, we can piece things together somewhat. And they've made, like, so many changes. And then... But if you didn't know anything, I feel like it's almost more confusing. Like, because you just have all these characters and they're just, like, dying off. And you don't know who's important and who's not. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you don't know who Melina is, I suppose it's fine. But then, like, how weird does it become later when if they're gonna, like, bring her back?
Yeah, that's my point. Like, they don't give you...
Who is this movie for? Who is it for?
They don't illustrate the importance of certain characters, or they have omitted specific information, like I've said many times. And as a result, viewers like us are going, why have you done that? And people who aren't familiar with it will be like, oh, that's fine. But then if they make a sequel and they start getting into other information, it's going to probably feel forced or something, or just very unusual, as if it's just been tacked on. You know what I mean? So, this is just an odd movie. It's weird. I mean, I may as well just give final verdicts, because I've nothing else to really say, but it's a split for me. It's like, as I've said, there are parts to like in this movie, and Kano, thank God, saves it. If Kano was not in this movie, honestly, it probably would be a bad film. Not horrible, but just not very good. And I feel like the action is solid. It's solid enough. That being said, the CGI isn't that great. It's pretty bad at times. So, look, I'm gonna go with a 5 out of 10 for this one. It's a middle-of-the-road movie. There are things you're gonna like. There are things you're not gonna like, if you're like me. And it's going to leave you wanting more. And if I'm going to make a direct comparison, I'll say this. If you're somebody who has seen the original, and you're hoping that this movie is perhaps better than that, or adds something to that original movie that it did not have, then you're going to be disappointed, because I can't believe I'm saying this, but the original movie is still better. like the effects aren't as good. Both of them don't have good effects, but the original has aged like badly. But it just has a bit more life and a bit more of a soul to it. It doesn't feel so shallow. What about you? How do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard for me to make a comparison to the original one because I watched it like last year for the first time, so I have no nostalgic feelings towards it. But I agree, it's like you said, right? The plot was simple, and therefore they had a lot of time to like make the characters more interesting. And yeah, and I like exactly, it had more life because of that. We're here like the plot was really distracting almost because they keep throwing more stuff at you and they're teleporting around all the time and you're just like, what the hell is going on? Also, just another thing, I thought that all the fatalities and stuff were really cool. They were done well.
We missed it.
And
We
they
missed
were
that.
like,
That's probably a big point of the movie. We just missed it.
yeah. They were fluid as well. I liked how they like flowed into the scene. It wasn't too like, you know, finish him. They were just like part of the fighting. When Sonya shows up and does her like shoots the hole, and you know the spine's still there. Like,
yeah,
I thought that was cool. Even though you know her having her powers made no sense because she didn't train, but it was done like fluid, and like yeah. So I liked all that. I thought that was cool, and yeah, the CGI in the fighting was good, and that's all that's important. If you have a couple CGI monsters that don't look that great, that's forgivable. At least all the fighting looked good, and the ice and the teleporting, so that's good, and the fire. Because in the trailer it kind of looked dodgy, so but watching it all play out was fine. Maybe just get used to it, I guess. Yeah, but overall I agree that it's definitely lacking, and the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like it. Like I came out of it and I thought, you know what, that was pretty good, and it's like, oh, but I don't like that, and I don't like that, and I don't like that. Oh, and I don't like that. I like this, oh, but I don't like that. And I just felt like the negatives are really like stacking up over the last couple of days when I was thinking about it and talking about it. So I think it was enjoyable though, and I had a good time. Like, you know, a big thing for me is the second time viewing, and I think this is really going to suffer from a second time viewing. I just feel like the plot was so bland, and there's so many like boring moments that watching a second time is going to be pretty difficult. Like you're just going to want to skip to the fights, honestly. Kind of like the game sometimes. You just want to skip the cutscene and get to the next fight. Look, I'll stick with what my original score was because I still think it's a fun movie. You still have a good time going, especially if you go see it in theaters. You're definitely gonna have a good time. So and I already lowered my score because I feel like fresh out of it, I was thinking a 7. I'm like, you know what, it's a 7 out of 10. It's fine, but yeah, the more I think about it, I just want to say it's definitely, for me, above average, but it's really not that great, so I'm going to give it a 6. Is where I'm resting.
Nah, look, I was in the same boat. I think I had a 6 when I came out of the movie, but like you, I started to think more about it, and then I was just like, okay, maybe personally I don't think it's a 6, but, you know, each to their own. Anyway, guys, that's Mortal Kombat 2021. Let's see what happens if we ever get a sequel or whatever spin-offs they plan. I know that some of these actors have like signed on for like 4 more movies or something like that. So let's see if they can at least improve it. In the meantime, we'll keep you guys updated when we do our next podcast, see what the next topic is. But other than that, have a good day, and we'll chat to you later. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Final round, fight! Round one, fight! Round two, fight! Final round, fight! Finish him! Your soul is mine.